Hi Spartans, this is Lana, your ASG president, and I am voting this year because I want my vote to create an opportunity for change. If you vote, you will create the same opportunity. So I encourage all of you to go out there and vote, create change.
Hey Spartans, I'm Jade, the ASG Director of Public Relations for 2020 to 21. And I vote because when I vote, I'm not just representing my voice in my community, but I'm also representing student voters and women voters. And I also vote because there are a lot of people in this country who aren't allowed to vote, and I think that's unfair. So when I vote, I have the opportunity to use my voice and my vote to represent those communities and to be an ally to those who need our support.
Hi, y'all. My name is Emmanuel Prince, and I'm your Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I vote because not only is it my right to vote, it allows me to make tangible change. And you too can make tangible change. And if you are unable to vote, I encourage you to encourage others to vote and ensure that you yourself are politically aware.
I'm Kenda, the Executive Vice President of the ASG, and I vote because I refuse to let others speak for me. Your vote is your voice and your representation, and it influences the decisions that the government makes for us.
I vote because I was born and raised in a country where the political repression gave you only one choice and one candidate to vote for. So one of my proudest moments is becoming a U.S. citizen in this country, where I felt I had the choice to select the candidate that was best for this country and for my family and I. So now I vote for the ones that do not have a voice, whether it is in this country or around the world. And I vote because without it, there is no change. So please vote.
I'm Hannah Schnittler, a senator at Maricosta, and I think it's important to vote because we have the privilege to live in a democracy where by simply casting our ballot, we can create positive, meaningful change.
I vote because my vote is my voice. I vote because my ancestors died to give me the right. And I vote because I believe in positive change.
I vote because I feel that voting is a privilege that unfortunately not everyone has, and because of that, it's our responsibility to help express our concerns and beliefs and participate in shaping the policies that directly affect our future and the future of everyone around us.
Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm a student at large in the ASG, and I vote because I believe in being part of a positive impact and change. By making my voice heard, not only can I represent some of the people who do not have the ability to vote, but I can be an addition to making our world and community a little bit brighter.
Hi, my name is Freddy Ramirez, and I'm the Dean of Admissions and Student Support. I vote because I know what it's like to not be allowed to vote. I vote because I know what it's like not to have a say regarding my future, the future of my family, and the future of the people who look like me and who work in this country so hard without the benefit of voting. I also vote keeping in mind what I believe is best for our country and all its citizens. And I really believe that every single vote matters, and that is why I vote.
Your vote matters because you matter. And you bring to the table a set of unique experiences, situations, knowledge that other people don't always have. So by exercising your right to vote, you're making sure that your voice is heard, and people who are in similar situations to you will also be represented. So go out and vote and make sure your voice is heard.
I vote because 100 years ago, women couldn't vote. I vote because my children deserve the best future possible. I vote because my voice matters.
All right, that's a little sneak preview, and there's more to come. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah, who's going to offer us a special welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Sarah Carpenter. I'm the Interim Student Services Specialist at the San Alejo campus. I am super excited to have all of you here. For today's event, I will be acting as the moderator, which you'll hear a little bit more about later in the welcome. I first want to say a special thank you to the League of Women Voters, Rita and Meg, who we have here with us today. They'll introduce themselves a little later. And then I also want to introduce our ASG. So Ashley, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Ashley Brandt and I am the Director of Legislative Affairs for MiraCosta's ASG.
Hi everyone, my name is Ian Clark and I am the Associated Student Government Vice President representing the San Leo campus.
Hi everyone, my name is Austin Quant and I am a Senator for the San Alejo campus.
Hello, my name is Sophie Musgrave and I am a Senator for the San Alejo campus as well.
Great, thank you everyone for that introduction. I'm now going to pass it off to Chelsea, who is going to help us with some community guidelines and expectations as we move through the rest of this event.
All right, well, thank you everyone for being here. I want to just acknowledge all the hard work that went into putting this event on. And thank you to anybody who's watching this in the future, as I know that there are some faculty who are going to be sharing this recording with their students. So thank you for everyone for your investment here and now in the present moment and also beyond. And so just understanding and recognizing that this is a incredibly important event. One thing that we wanted to start with was highlighting what the ASG's goals are for this year. So there's two main goals that the ASG has, and I have the honor, along with Kathy, of serving as the ASG co-advisor. And so that's why I'm speaking to this part. So the ASG has two different goals. The first one is to educate the student body on the importance of being politically aware and ways to be politically active. So that's exactly what we're doing right now. So with that embodiment, it really is kind of nice to flow into their second goal, which is to facilitate and encourage diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts throughout events and trainings at MiraCosta College. And so that means here in this space, we're coming into this space with an equity-minded approach to that. And so that means that we do have some community expectations, and that includes everything from us being like actively involved throughout this. We're going to be asking for participation throughout. So please ask any questions that you have and know that we'll be receiving those questions without any judgment. And what that means is that if there's a question that maybe that you have that's on your mind and maybe not necessarily wanting to ask that question out loud, if you want, you can privately message the moderator in the chat, and then the moderator will go ahead and repeat that question out loud on your behalf. And then at the same time, we also want to make sure that the questions and the comments that we're bringing forward are ones that are going to be done so with respectful dialogue. And so if we ever encounter a moment where maybe there's something that's said that really isn't in line with what the ASG's values are, what the MiraCosta values are, what we might do as a response to that is just pause, and then I'll pop into the waiting room with that person who's maybe said something that has brought forward a little bit of concern, just to check in with them and revisit maybe some other ways that we can ask some of those questions in a more respectful manner. But also knowing that when we go through these propositions at the end, we're going to ask for people to kind of speak on the propositions themselves and maybe take off your ASG hat. So no longer represent the ASG, just represent you yourself and your own identity as a person, and saying, I'm kind of thinking that I want to vote this way because this proposition is going to directly impact me in my life in this way. And I want to share that story because maybe my story will help inform, somebody else make a decision about how they want to vote. And so when we really get into that storytelling time, that's going to be a really important place for us to really hold, great respect for our community in mind. And so if anybody has any specific ideas that come to mind or other, community expectations that we have, please chime in, let me know. I'm going to go ahead and put some community expectations in the chat as well, so we can revisit those and have some tools to move with throughout. So if you want to add to that, please go ahead and add into the chat. And then I'm also available for a private message in case anybody has anything that they want to add or contribute. So before I hand it back over to Sarah, who's going to introduce our co-sponsor of the event, I'm wondering, does anybody have anything that they'd like to add or contribute, or that's on their mind before we move forward? Waiting a comfortable silence amount of time for that. Okay. All right. Getting a thumbs up from Ian. We're good. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to Sarah. And just thank you all for everyone who's here. It's great to see so many people.
Thank you, Chelsea. Appreciate it. So now we're going to move into a welcome from our League of Women Voters, Rita and Meg. We really thank you for your collaboration and your partnership to help us educate our community on these propositions and these measures that will greatly affect our community moving forward. So we really appreciate you being here and the expertise and knowledge that you have to share with us. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you all.
Well, hello, and thank you to Sarah, Chelsea, and Kathy, and the ASG officers, and also to all you Miracostans who are joining us today. My name is Rita Souza. I'm a retired professor from Miracosta's Business Department and a member of the League of Women Voters. I'll be presenting today with my League colleague, Meg Thode. In our talk, we're going to cover the ballot measures that appear on your November ballot. These are state propositions numbers 14 through 25. There are 12 of them. We will cover these items in numerical order. And of course, you may have questions, so Meg's going to cover how we're going to handle those. Meg?
Hi, everyone. Absolutely, we love questions. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and submit them using the chat feature on this call. If you're unfamiliar, that's going to be on the bottom of your screen. If you'd like, you can present it to the group as a whole. If you'd like to submit your question anonymously, we suggest you send a private message to the moderator, and then the moderator will go ahead and forward that question to the group. Please enter your questions as we go along and as they come to mind. We're going to build in a little time for questions at the end of each proposition. But just, for the sake of clarity, we do ask that you include the proposition number that corresponds to your question. If you should think of a question later after this presentation, or say, we run short on time, you can still ask us by going to our website, which you can see up on the screen, lwvncsd.org. And if you leave your email address, we will get back to you directly. Also on that website, you can check out our frequently asked questions list. This is a new feature we're really excited to share. It could be that someone's already asked a similar question, or if you don't see your question there, again, you can submit it to us via email, and we can put it up. So that's how we're going to handle questions today.
Okay, well, I'd like to kick us off with giving you a little bit of background about our organization. For over 100 years, the League of Women Voters has worked to create a more perfect democracy. Since our founding in 1920 by leaders of the women's suffrage movement, we have been a nonpartisan, activist, grassroots organization that believes that voters have a critical role to play in our democracy. One of our key roles is education. We've studied the state propositions and local ballot measures, and in this presentation, Meg and I will offer our understanding of these issues based on official sources that we consulted. The League also advocates for policy matters that align with our positions on making democracy work. Some propositions on this ballot are being endorsed by the League, and you can find that information on our website. But today, we are here not advocating for anything. We are here only to educate. The League does not ever support or oppose any candidate or political party. So as you listen to our presentation this afternoon, here are a few things that you can keep in mind. Propositions are proposed laws presented to the public to vote on. Propositions can make new laws, they can change existing laws, and they can even change the California Constitution. They can be placed on the ballot by either people who collect enough voter signatures or by state lawmakers. A state proposition that we'll be talking about today passes and becomes law if it receives more than 50% yes votes. There are some local measures that we won't discuss today that will be on the ballot, and some of those require 55% of votes to pass. Each proposition that we will present includes supporters' statements for and opponents' statements. These arguments are not vetted by us, by the League. They are the statements paid for by the proponents of those particular arguments, for or against. I want to remind you that you do not need to vote for every measure or candidate. Leaving a blank does not invalidate your ballot. Also, our role is not to persuade you to vote for or against anything, but to provide you with information so that you can make an informed choice. The decision on how to vote is yours and yours alone. So use the Votersedge.org website to see your ballot, including details about money that has been raised and spent for and against a particular measure. So I'd like to give just a few important voting details for those of you who haven't voted yet. All active registered voters in California will receive a ballot in the mail. San Diego County ballots were mailed out beginning October 5th. Most of you have probably received yours already. It's important, though, to check your registration in case you haven't received a ballot. You can do that in either of two ways. You can go online to sdvote.com, and there, while you're there, you can sign up to actually track your ballot all the way to its destination. Or you can call the San Diego Registrar of Voters at 858-565-5800, and you can check on your registration there with someone who will help you. There are registration deadlines, and coming up real soon is the deadline of October 19th. However, you can still register conditionally after that date, but it's going to have to be done in person, either at the county elections office in San Diego or at your polling location. If you are voting in person, polling places will be open for 4 days this election, beginning October 31st through Election Day on November 3rd. In regard to mail ballots, according to the nonpartisan California Voter Foundation, nearly 2% of all mail ballots are rejected. So there's really nothing worse than trying to vote and not have your ballot counted. The main reason for that is that they're postmarked too late. So the people have elected to return their ballot by the post office and haven't gotten it there by November 3rd. Late ballots are the most common reason for rejecting a ballot. Another reason for rejection is that the envelope that your ballot goes into has not been signed. Ballots returned without signatures will get thrown away also. And finally, when you do sign your envelope, sign it legibly. Ballots with signatures that don't match risk for not getting counted. And you might say, match with what? It's with your DMV records, whether it's your driver's license or your California ID card. And check your polling place, because many have changed since 2018. And the Registrar of Voters website has clickable links showing mail ballot drop-off locations and ballot places in North County. So let's get started. Sophie Musgrave and I are going to talk to you about Proposition 14. This proposition is an initiative brought by proponents of the proposed bill who gathered the required number of signatures at a cost of a little over $4 million. By way of background, you should know that stem cells are used in regenerative medicine to help develop treatments for many serious diseases, including Alzheimer's, stroke, diabetes, cancer, epilepsy, and HIV/AIDS. In 2004, the federal government placed significant restrictions on stem cell research. Rejecting those federal restrictions, 59% of California voters passed Prop 71 in 2004, which affirmed in our state constitution the right of California scientists to conduct stem cell research and establish the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine, CIRM. $3 billion in general obligation bonds were sold to finance the Institute's research grants. Grants were issued to universities and other entities in California for stem cell research, for new treatments, for clinical trials, labs, and facilities, and their related activities. Grantees were required to share income from stem cell research inventions. To date, $350,000 in income has been realized from those inventions. So the way it is now, in 2009, the federal government changed its guidelines on stem cell research, lifting the 2004 restrictions. About $2.7 billion of the $3 billion bond fund has been awarded already, leaving approximately $30 million in funds. The CIRM, the Institute, is cutting back staff and has suspended funding for new projects since funding is running out. If Prop 14 would pass, it would allow the state to sell $5.5 billion in general obligation bonds to fund grants for stem cell research and other medical research, such as facilities and some administrative costs. $1.5 billion of that would be earmarked for research for brain-related diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases. Funding would also be used for student and physician training and fellowship. The Institute's administrative spending would be capped at 7.5% of the bond funds, and oversight of the Institute and their spending would be strengthened. Other changes are intended to improve patient access and treatment affordability. So this will have some fiscal effects. The total cost of the bond's principal plus interest is estimated at $7.8 billion over a 30-year period, averaging $260 million per year. Protection of the general fund would be accomplished, California's general fund, by postponing payments on the bond for the first 5 years. And the amount of bonds which could be sold annually would be limited to $540 million over 10 years or more. Some revenue could be recouped from inventions based on research, but that amount is uncertain. So let's hear what supporters say. That stem cell funding has led to significant advances in treatments and cures for many diseases and over 2,900 medical discoveries. We should build on these successes. Supporters also say that changes will increase patient access and treatment affordability and support the economy. Prop 14 is supported by over 70 patient advocate organizations and leading medical science advocates. Opponents, on the other hand, say that California cannot afford the $7.8 billion, especially in the time of an economic crisis. Interest repayments could increase taxes. They also say that since the federal restrictions on stem cell research were lifted, private investors and companies have become major players in this field and can do this job. Previous funding has not yielded the promised results or major economic benefits. And finally, opponents say that the CIRM is a troubled agency. So you can follow the money and see the latest in contributors by looking on Voter's Edge using the links shown in the middle and the bottom of your screen. So what does it mean if you vote yes or no? If you vote yes, you want California to issue $5.5 billion in general obligation bonds, primarily for stem cell research and the development of new medical treatments. If you vote no, you do not want California to issue new bonds for state-financed stem cell research. So, Sophie, do you have anything to add, or perhaps your personal perspective? I'd love to hear it.
Yes, thank you, Rita. So I just have some background on what stem cell therapy really is and what it is used for. So stem cells basically have the ability to develop into different types of cells, including muscle cells, brain cells, etc. So stem cell research is directed at stem cell therapy and stem cell transplants. Stem cell transplants are used to replace damaged tissue caused by diseases or injuries. This would include repairing arthritis damage or replacing insulin for people who suffer from diabetes. And stem cell therapy can be used to study diseases, identify new drugs, or screen drugs for toxic side effects. So this could be really helpful, for instance, studying how stem cells develop into heart muscles could provide clues onto how we could include heart muscles to repair itself after a heart attack. That's just one example. Some things that have also been accomplished since 2004, when the first bond was approved, is 2 FDA-approved treatments developed for blood cancers, over 50 babies cured of bubble baby disease with non-functioning immune systems, and over 95% of patients in a trial for paralyzed individuals showed motor improvements. So that's just some insight on stem cell therapy and stem cell research.
Okay, very good. Well, I think we'll go ahead and turn it over to Meg now, and to talk about Prop 15.
Thank you so much, guys. Wonderful. So let's jump in on Prop 15, taxes on commercial property. This proposition would amend the state constitution. It was brought to the ballot by a group of citizens who gathered close to 1.7 million signatures at a cost of nearly $6 million. A little background, or a lot of background, as it were. In 1978, California voters passed Prop 13, which amended the state constitution. Prop 13 set the tax base of all property at 1975 market values and the tax rate at 1%. Properties are not reassessed until sold. Otherwise, assessments can increase no more than 2% each year. Because commercial property is sold less often than residential property, and because of a loophole which defines a sale or change of ownership to a single new buyer, most commercial and industrial properties in California still benefit from that initial 1975 tax base, and as a result are taxed well below current market value. Annual increases being capped at 2%, that increase is much lower than properties appreciate annually in general. So this loophole, which has kept commercial property taxes low, has resulted in a larger share of property taxes that come from residential properties and less from commercial and industrial properties. For example, between 1978 and 2017, LA County's residential property taxes grew from roughly 50% to 70% of total property assessments, while the percentage of commercial and industrial taxes decreased almost 20% from roughly 50% to 30%. So the situation at present, Prop 13 caused a shift in how schools and local governments were funded. Facing declining budgets for education, a state constitutional amendment mandated that a minimum of 40% of California's general fund be spent on K-12 education. Nevertheless, today, California spending per pupil ranks 39th in the nation. So what would change? Prop 15 would change how certain commercial properties are reassessed. Commercial or industrial property owners with over $3 million in property would have their properties reassessed to current market value at the unchanged tax rate of 1%. From then on, the property's value would be reassessed at least every 3 years. There would be no changes to the way residential properties, including rental or agricultural properties, are assessed. Businesses with total commercial property valued at $3 million or less would continue to be assessed based on purchase price as it is today. Small businesses, defined as those with fewer than 50 employees, would pay no taxes on business equipment, and other businesses would not pay taxes on the first $500,000 of business equipment. So what would the fiscal impact be? It is estimated that revenues to California's general fund would increase $6.5 to $11.5 billion, and tax revenue from commercial business equipment taxes would decrease by several hundred million per year. The result would be a net increase in revenue to the general fund. Proceeds from most of this increased revenue would be split between local government and schools. So supporters and opponents. Supporters of Prop 15 say it closes the loophole that has allowed publicly traded companies like Chevron, IBM, and Intel to avoid increased taxes. They say it provides billions in new revenue for communities and schools. And importantly to California homeowners, renters, and landlords, Prop 15 does not change residential property or those protections provided by Prop 13. Opponents of the proposition say it would trigger the largest property tax increase in California's history, and they argue that California businesses' costs would be passed on to their customers. They say that this will destroy businesses, and others will leave California in search of lower property taxes. So you can see on the screen a list of some of the supporters and opponents. To see more of these contributors as well as the money behind each side, you can go to Voters Edge. I realize there's a typo on the slide. It should be votersedge.org, votersedge.org for the latest information. So finally, to summarize, a yes vote on Prop 15 means property taxes on most commercial properties worth more than $3 million would go up in order to provide new funding to local governments and schools. Residential property tax protections are maintained. A no vote means the property tax code will remain unchanged. Large commercial properties would continue to be reassessed only upon sale or transfer. So that's the information we have on Prop 15. Ashley, is there anything you'd like to share or expand on?
So with the Legislative Affairs Committee, we did our own little bit of research. We saw that, yes, it's going to be only affecting commercial and industrial property worth more than $3 million. We also saw of the 40% that of that taxation that goes towards school, 89% of that will go to public schools, while 11% of that will go to community colleges. In our findings, we saw that most of the associations that support this are California Federation of Teachers, California Teachers Association. So it looks like mostly educational organizations, are in support of this. And then for the no vote, I see that, where is it? That the organizations that are opposed are like American Indian Chamber of Commerce of California, American Legion, Department of California, California State Council of Laborers. So I guess I kind of have like a bit of a question related to this, where like when it comes to the yes vote, it seems like it would take the pressure off of property taxes, which has been a big issue when it came to people voting on sending taxing towards school and funding towards school. But I've also heard on the opposition side, people saying, oh, well, next it's going to be higher property taxes. What do you guys think about that?
Want me to take it, Meg?
Oh, sure. I mean, if you want to hop in, I think it's a great question.
It is, and most of the negative ads regarding this proposition have claimed that, yes, this is the first step with commercial property, and next it will be a residential property. I'll ask you a question in response to your question. What legislator in California would propose that the residential property tax be increased in California? And I'll answer, none of them. Because it is such a holy grail of homeowners in California that we have this wonderful low property assessment, and that we can also pass that on to our children. So that's part of the answer. Meg, maybe you have some more.
I think that was a really nice comment. I would just say, as it concerns supporters and opponents, obviously we can't speculate why they might say these things, where they're coming from. What we can do is look at the proposition as stated and judge it on its merits. And the fact is that this proposition is very clear that residential property will not be affected as it relates to property tax. So that might be, a slippery slope argument that some people fear coming down the pipeline, but it's not contained in this proposition. So I would say from that point of view, it's not something to be concerned about as it relates to Prop 15.
Yeah, and I
thank you all for answering that question. We're at about time for this prop, so if we can move on to the next one and maybe pick up the dialogue if we have some time at the end. I just want us to stay on time for the rest of the props. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, Ian Clark and I will talk about Prop 16. This proposition would amend the California Constitution. It's also known as the Affirmative Action Amendment, and passed with a 2/3 majority in the California legislature and placed on the ballot as required by our state constitution. In way of a little background, promoting diversity is synonymous with allowing affirmative action. The term affirmative action was used in 1961 when President John F. Kennedy signed an executive order requiring government contractors to take affirmative action to ensure that applicants and employees were treated fairly without regard to their race, color, or national origin. The idea is that passive observance of laws is not enough to wrongs of persistent discrimination, despite protections guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution, such as the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Employers, schools, and contractors must act affirmatively to reach the. Despite many changes over the decades, the U.S. Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld affirmative action policies since the first court case was brought in 1978, including as recently as 2016. And the court has only disallowed of quotas in achieving diversity goals. Court rulings standing in 1996, California voters passed Prop 209, a constitutional amendment which banned the race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in public employment, public contracting, and public education, essentially banning affirmative action. California is one of only states that does not allow race or gender to be considered as criteria for these decisions. After 1996, some public entities, especially public education, created policies and programs to consider characteristics not banned by Prop 209. Workarounds were developed that used other criteria, such as socioeconomic status, regional diversity, and first in family to attend college, for example. And that was a way to achieve diversity goals on college campuses. So if Prop 16 were approved, it would repeal Prop 209. State and local governments, public universities, and other public entities would, within the limits of federal law, be allowed to develop and use affirmative action programs that grant preferences based on race, ethnicity, sex, and national origin. There would be no direct financial impact on state and local budgets. None of that is projected, and future impacts are highly uncertain and depend on future decisions made by state and local governments. So supporters say that women and persons of color continue to suffer unequal treatment, and Prop 16 is needed to fight these long-standing patterns of discrimination. Prop 16 improves access for everyone to opportunities for good jobs, fair wages, and equal education. And finally, and importantly, supporters say it will align state law with federal laws which permit affirmative action. A short list of supporters for Prop 16 include the ACLU, the U.S. Board of Regents, the League of Women Voters, California. Opponents, however, say that Prop 16 would be a step backward. The state should treat everyone equally. Preference should not be given to one racial or ethnic group over another. Opponents also contend that affirmative action perpetuates the stereotype that women and minorities cannot succeed without preferential treatment. Some of the opponents are the American Civil Rights Institute, American Freedom Alliance, Students for Fair Admission, and the Chinese American Civic Action Alliance. To follow the money and see the latest information on contributors, look on Voter's Edge using this link below. And again, we're correcting that. Is it .org or .com?
.org. It should be .org.
Oh, how sad on all these slides. Okay, we'll have to repeat that each time at votersedge.org. Okay, so what will your voting mean? If you vote yes on Prop 16, it means that public colleges, universities, and agencies would be allowed to include race, sex, ethnicity, and country of origin as part of their decision-making. They would be allowed to create affirmative action programs to increase diversity or to help certain groups. A no vote means that the current ban on consideration of race, sex, color, ethnicity, and national origin in public education, public employment, and public contracting would remain in effect. So Ian, do you have something you'd like to add from your research or perhaps a student perspective on this?
Well, absolutely. And something I wanted to point out is that we know, it's just simply a fact that diversity in the workplace and also in schooling provides a more impactful and diverse environment, producing a range of ideas that will eventually make a more productive environment for everyone. Yet also a fact is that we as humans are naturally biased and even unconscious of it at times. And this is proven very, very specifically in this case. If you note that in the years directly after Prop 209 was passed, which was passed in 1996, there was a sharp decrease in admissions to people of color to schools throughout campuses in California. Now, in general, there was at least a 12% drop throughout the state, and this is just within the first couple of years. However, there were extreme outliers like UCLA and Berkeley that saw a decrease of up to 60%. And I want to say that again, 60% of decrease within that time, just showing clearly that natural biases can really play a part. And in reference to equal preference, some would say that that people of color need additional preference because to basically counteract the 400 years of oppression that they suffered through, and this is the only way to really move ahead. And again, that is, my opinion on the matter.
Thank you, Ian. I wonder if we have any questions. Moderator, do you have any questions on this
I
item?
don't have any questions at this time on this specific prop, but as you can hear, we're at time for that one. So if anybody has any additional questions about this prop that they would like to share, again, just a reminder, you can message me privately and we can also address those with the league or another resource at another time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Let's keep going with Prop 17. So Prop 17 addresses parolee voting rights. This proposition is an amendment to the state constitution, and it was proposed by a 2/3 vote of the legislature. Background on the topic. So it could be helpful to review. There are 3 categories of crimes, of which 2 are major types of crimes: misdemeanors and felonies. Misdemeanors are less serious crimes with sentences of less than a year. Incarceration, if any, is in a county jail. Felonies are serious, violent, or sexual crimes that may result in a year or more in a state or federal prison. That would be followed by parole, a period of state supervision in the community for about 3 years. Convicted felons in California are not allowed to vote while in prison or on parole. Rules vary across the country. 16 other states and DC have already passed laws expanding access to voting for people with criminal convictions. Some states do not restore voting rights until the completion of parole. So what would Prop 17 change? California residents who have finished their prison sentences, even if on parole, would have their voting rights restored and be able to participate in local, state, and federal elections. Incidentally, registered voters have the right to run for offices if they meet the qualifications. Persons serving in prison for a felony crime would still not be able to vote. Projected fiscal effects. The addition of voters to the state roll would result in the following expenses. The annual cost to counties of updating voter rolls and distributing voting materials is estimated at hundreds of thousands of dollars total statewide. And the state would incur a one-time cost of about the same amount for voter registration cards and updating systems. For context, though, that is still less than 1% of the state general budget. Supporters and opponents. Supporters of Prop 17 say when a person completes their prison sentence, they should be encouraged to re-enter society and have a stake in their community. They say that studies show lower recidivism rates in states that allow parolees to vote. Persons on parole or parolees pay taxes and so should have a representative voice in government. Opponents of Prop 17 say that this amendment would allow violent criminals to vote before they have completed their full sentence of prison plus parole. They also say that crime victims are denied full recompense when parolees have rights restored before completing their rehabilitation. And finally, they argue that nonviolent felons serving time in county jail already have the right to vote. So again, on the screen, you can see a list of some of the supporters and opponents. As always, this really is a valuable resource, votersedge.org, to see the latest in that information. And then to wrap it up, voting yes on this proposition means people on parole who are US citizens and residents of California and at least 18 years of age would be able to vote if registered. Voting no on this proposition means that persons on state parole would continue to be unable to vote. So that's our information. Ian, is there anything you'd like to share or expand on?
Absolutely. And, I wanted to focus on a couple of points there. And one is that no matter what your opinion may be on this particular topic, I wanted to point out a fact that the United States was created on the concept of no taxation without representation. And if you are paying tax, shouldn't you therefore be able to have all of your rights? And I don't know, that's just, I think that's pretty clear, in our Constitution. And just as a point of fact, and to give my own personal opinion on this, my belief is that the prison system was established and funded in an effort to reinstate slavery into the United States. I mean, entering into the prison system strips you of all of your fundamental rights and essentially reduces you down into a slave. And there is no coincidence that prisons are completely filled with people of color, yet we make up a small percentage of the entire population. And for that reason alone, we need to restore the rights to people on parole. I don't really see as there being an option, in my opinion. But I'd love to hear other people on this topic.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that opinion. And if anyone has any questions, I'd love to hear them. Okay, so we have a question coming in. What are arguments for not allowing convicted individual suffrage? Is it just about removing a privilege? Rita, if you'd like, I can go first, and then if you'd like to add anything. So generally, it is acknowledged that we have a sort of social contract that you agree to follow the laws of our society, and as a result, you get to enjoy certain privileges as an otherwise eligible adult. But when an individual commits certain kinds of crimes, it's seen as a break in that contract, and as a result, you lose the privilege. Now, different states have different systems for deciding when to, return those privileges to individuals. In California, an individual who commits a lower level crime, a misdemeanor, is able to vote while on parole, although not while in county jail, I believe. But for a more serious felony conviction, you are not allowed to vote in prison. And as things currently stand, you are not allowed to vote while on parole either. So that's generally the idea behind why you lose your right to vote when you've committed a crime, but then each state, addresses the particulars a little differently.
Thank you, Meg. I appreciate you answering that question. We're at about time for this one. So as always, we can pick up on the conversation if we have some time at the end, but I think we'll move on to the next prop.
Okay, that's Prop 18, and Austin Quant and I will discuss this for you. Prop 18 is a state constitutional amendment referred to the ballot by a 2/3 vote of the legislature. Amendments to the Constitution must be approved by the voters. Throughout our history, there has been slow forward movement to expand suffrage, or the right to vote, extending voting privileges to more citizens who had previously been denied the right to vote, such as African Americans, women, and Native Americans. In 1971, during the Vietnam era, the 26th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified, guaranteeing the right to vote to U.S. citizens who were 18 years or older. At present, 18 states and the District of Columbia permit 17-year-olds who will be 18 by the time of the general election to vote. In California, an individual may pre-register to vote at 17, but cannot actually vote unless they are 18 by election day. In 2004, the State Legislative Council stated that an amendment to the California Constitution to permit a person under the age of 18 to vote would not violate federal law. So if Prop 18 passes, 17-year-olds who will turn 18 by the date of the general election would be able to vote in any primary or special elections, so long as they turn 18 by the general election, which is held in November. They would also be able to present themselves as candidate for office. In primary or special elections, voters can choose who will be on the ballot for the November general election. They can vote on statewide ballot measures, and they can also vote in a special election when there is an open position in Congress or a statewide office. Prop 18 is projected to result in a one-time cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars to update voter registration system. And for the each election cycle, up to $1 million due to increased costs due to the number of voters. Supporters say that this proposition will boost voting, especially among young voters who are underrepresented. They also say that first-time voters should be able to participate in the full election cycle, beginning with the primary. Finally, they say that voting is habit forming and will start young people, and starting young will engender lifetime voting. Opponents, however, say that 17-year-olds are not yet adults, and because they are legal minors, they are not independent. Therefore, they can be too easily influenced by their parents or other authorities, and thus makes it unlikely that they would be expressing their own views and choices. Finally, opponents argue that since they do not pay taxes, 17-year-olds should not be able to vote on tax and bond issues. To follow the money or the latest supporters or opponents, see votersedge.org using the link below. If you vote yes on, which proposition are we on now? Oh boy, I'm on Prop 18. If you vote yes on Prop 18, it would amend the California Constitution and allow 17-year-olds to vote in California primary and special elections if they will turn 18 by the November election. A no vote would not amend the California Constitution. 17-year-olds would not be allowed to vote in California. Austin, I wonder if you have something to add from your research, or perhaps you have polled some of your classmates on this issue?
Yeah, well, first off, I think that it's important to note that this was the 6th time that state lawmakers had considered this idea, but this is the first time that it actually has reached voters. And another point that supporters make is that 17-year-olds can serve in the military with parent permission, but they cannot vote yet. And obviously, voting impacts foreign policy decisions that deal with the military. And as you stated, but I think that it's important to restate, is that 18 states and DC already allow 17-year-olds to vote. And a question that I would like to pose is, will 17-year-olds be able to vote in presidential primary elections, since there are more of a nationwide primary, so to speak?
Yes, so the answer would be yes, if Prop 18 passes, yes. Do we have any other questions on the topic?
All right, I am seeing and hearing nothing, so I think we can move on to 19.
Awesome, thank you. So Prop 19, this is another property tax proposition. Prop 19 would amend the state constitution. The legislature referred this proposition to the ballot after they reached a compromise with the California Realtors Association. A political action committee association with the California Realtors Association raised $19 million to gather the required signatures for a citizens initiative after their 2018 initiative, Prop 5, failed. So some background. Since Prop 13 passed, that proposition from 1978, increases in property value assessments are limited to 2% per year and only reassessed when property is sold. In 2018, Prop 5 was placed on the ballot. It would have allowed eligible homeowners to transfer their lower property tax value to a replacement home an unlimited number of times. That proposition was defeated by the voters. Over the years, additional legislation has allowed eligible homeowners, defined as people over 55 or those severely disabled or victims of a natural disaster, to transfer their lower property taxable value one time to a home with the same or lower value and only within certain counties in the state. Additionally, parents and grandparents can transfer their family home and the first $1 million of other real property to children or grandchildren without triggering a property tax reassessment. What would change? Prop 19 would allow seniors or severely disabled persons to transfer the taxable value of their primary residence up to 3 times to a home of lower, equal, or greater value anywhere in the state. Victims of natural disasters would be limited to 1 lifetime transfer. So the first component of Prop 19 deals with transferring the taxable value of property. The second component addresses inherited property. And if Prop 19 passed, persons would be able to transfer the taxable value of a family home or farm if it is used, only if it is used as the heir's primary residence. So the first component addresses transferring taxable value. The second component closes the inherited property loophole. Projected fiscal effects of the proposition. They are expected to include increased revenues for local governments and schools by many tens of millions of dollars per year. Over time, these revenue gains could grow to a few $100 million per year. Any net savings and most other additional revenue realized from this proposition will be allocated for fire protection. So supporters and opponents. Supporters of Prop 19 say that it protects the promises of Prop 13 and expands its protections to seniors, wildfire victims, and the disabled. Further, they say it closes the loophole in the inherited property rules, which have shortchanged local schools and governments. And they say this proposition will generate much needed revenue for fire protection. And you can see some of the supporters on your screen. Opponents to this proposition argue that eliminating protections for inherited properties would remove one of the few tools left for parents to help their children financially. They argue that allowing seniors expanded opportunities to retain lower property assessments would result in unfairly disadvantaging first-time and younger homebuyers. As always, to follow the money and see the latest in contributors, check out that website, votersedgeorg. We keep repeating it because it really is an incredible resource. And then to summarize, a yes vote means that eligible homeowners will be able to transfer their lower tax value 3 times anywhere in the state for a home of same or higher value. Inherited property must be used as a primary residence to keep the lower property tax assessment values. A no vote means that existing property tax rules would remain the same. Eligible homeowners would be able to transfer their lower property tax value once with certain other restrictions. The inherited property rules would not change. So that's our information on Prop 19. Austin, what are your thoughts? What else can we add to color in the picture?
Yeah, I think that it's important to connect it to a current event which is happening in California right now, which are the wildfires. And this ballot measure would create the California Fire Response Fund, also known as the SFRF, and County Revenue Protection Fund. And the ballot measure would require the California Director of Finance to calculate additional revenues and net savings resulting from the ballot measure. And the California State Controller would be required to deposit 75% of the calculated revenue to the Fire Response Fund and 15% to the County Revenue Protection Fund. And as I said earlier, with the wildfires going on at the moment, there seems to be somewhat of a lack of funding for fighting the fires. So I think that it's important to remember this when making your decision.
Moderator, do we have any questions on Prop 20? Thank you, Austin.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it looks like we have Ashley. Were you raising your hand for a question?
Yes, if there's enough time, but
we've got about 1 minute left.
Oh, okay, I'll try to be fast. So I was wondering how this would affect property tax. Would it only affect the people that are reassessing their house? And yeah, I think that's all I had in mind. Yeah. How does this affect property tax? And yeah, does it affect the value of the housings around it?
Oh, you want to take that, Meg, or I'll be happy to.
Why don't you get started? And then if there's anything else I can add, I'll jump in.
Well, maybe I can give you a personal example, which is not something that the League researched, but for instance, in my neighborhood, my husband and I have lived in our house for 35 years. A young couple, actually a doctor and a nurse and their 3 children, just bought the home next door to me. Because that property changed value, or changed owners rather, their property tax payment is, I'm gonna guess, about 3 times what mine is. So it only affects property in the neighborhood if that property changes owners. Does that help? I don't know if that example helped at all.
I think that works. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Great, thank you so much. And we will go ahead and move along to 20.
Okay. Austin, again, is going to help me with Proposition 20, which was placed on the ballot through an initiative petition sponsored by 2 members of the California Assembly and other citizens. The cost of gathering signatures for Prop 20 was $2 million. To understand Prop 20, it may be helpful to first review the 3 types of criminal offenses. The 3 levels of crime are 1, felonies, which are the most serious criminal offenses and punished by at least 1 year in state prison or county jail. The second is misdemeanors, which are less serious crimes and result in less than 1 year in jail. And then there are infractions, also known as petty offenses. They are minor violations of state law and do not show up on a criminal record. Within these 3 categories, there are crimes called wobblers. They are crimes such as identity theft that can tip between being considered a felony or a misdemeanor, or between a misdemeanor and an infraction. The prosecuting attorney or the judge has the discretion to determine how a wobbler is charged and makes the determination based on the circumstances of the crime and the criminal history of the defendant. So let's take a moment now to define probation versus parole. A person convicted of a crime can be placed on probation as an alternative to jail or prison, or it can be part of the sentence that the offender must serve. Parole, on the other hand, can be granted as early release after an inmate has completed part or most of their sentence. Parole is intended to safely reintegrate a person back into society. Well, over the last 10 years, California was facing a mandate from the U.S. Supreme Court concerning prison overcrowding, and voters approved 3 initiatives to cut the California prison population, which is now at 138% of capacity among all sites. These prison population reductions resulted from downgrading some nonviolent felonies, such as theft, to misdemeanors, and by reclassifying some violent felonies as nonviolent offenses, and by loosening rules around parole eligibility. Prop 20 seeks to reverse some of that. Prop 20 would limit early release parole by reclassifying some 20 crimes, increasing them from nonviolent felonies to violent acts. It would also tighten requirements that are now considered for parole. Prop 20 would create 2 new theft-related crimes, serial theft and organized retail theft, and would allow some theft-related crimes, generally punished as misdemeanors, to be punished as felonies, increasing those penalties. Prop 20 would expand DNA collection to include samples from adults convicted of some misdemeanor offenses and from all juveniles convicted of felonies. There would be fiscal impacts of Prop 20. State and county costs would be expected to increase due to higher correctional costs, court-related costs, and law enforcement costs. All of these costs would be related to more persons being in jail or prison and for longer periods of time. Supporters say that Prop 20 would restrict parole to nonviolent offenders. They add that reclassifying some offenses would prevent the early release of violent offenders and tighten the supervision of those who have been granted parole. They claim that increasing DNA collection will improve public safety. Supporters include law enforcement unions and grocery store chains. Opponents, on the other hand, say that Prop 20 wastes money and rolls back prison reform efforts. Opponents believe that our current laws are strong enough and that increased costs of Prop 20 waste money that could otherwise be spent on education, rehabilitation, and other programs. Opponents include Californians for Public Safety and Rehabilitation, former Governor Jerry Brown, and the ACLU. To follow the money and see the latest in contributors, look on Votersedgeorg using the link below. So to summarize, a yes vote means that you support 4 different things. 1, adding crimes to the list of violent felonies. 2, restricting parole. 3, reclassifying certain types of theft and fraud as wobblers. And finally, you support increased collection of DNA samples. A no vote means that you do not support changes to the criminal code and further restricting parole eligibility. Also, a no vote means you are against increased DNA collection. Austin, would you like to add or emphasize any of the points that I've made so far?
Yeah, I would like to go over like the organizations that support a no vote appear to be mostly, organizations that support a yes vote appear mostly to be sheriffs and police organizations such as the Association for Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs and Los Angeles Police Protective League. And the organizations that support a no vote are other organizations such as the California Teacher Association and the Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice. And also, I think that it's important to note the large fiscal impact that this proposition may have on other publicly funded programs such as schools.
Thank you, Austin. So we did have a question about this, and it was, would DNA only be collected on certain misdemeanors or felonies? And what are the specific parameters or rules for storing DNA, and will it be held somewhere indefinitely? I'm not sure if you all have some information on that we can share.
Well, great question. I can answer the first part, and that is that, yes, some misdemeanors, let's see, the DNA of adults who have committed some misdemeanors, and we have not researched exactly which ones those are, would be, DNA would be collected. But in terms of minors who are convicted of a felony, they would also have their DNA collected. Now, to the question of storage and the time involved, that is a really excellent question, and we don't know, but I'm writing it down right now, and we will post the answer on our website, and also find a way to get that information to your organizers so that information could be shared. I think, unless Meg, you know
No. I think that's a wonderful question, though. And now that it's been asked, I want to know the answer as well.
Me too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. I also just want to give everybody a brief time check. We are getting pretty close to time, so just keep that in mind as we move forward. And then if there's no other questions, we should move on to 21.
Wonderful. I was just about to say, everyone, let's take a deep breath together. If you need to shake or stretch, we are over halfway through. You guys are doing amazing. I'm loving the questions that are coming in and the comments and discussion. And for future audiences, I'm sure you're fantastic as well. For Prop 21, rent control expansion, this proposition came to the ballot by a petition launched by Michael Weinstein of the AIDS Foundation. Prop 21 cost $3.5 million to gather enough signatures. A little background. During the 70s and 80s, 13 California cities adopted rent control ordinances, which varied from city to city. Some included a provision that limited a landlord's ability to increase rent after a unit was vacated. In 1995, the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act was passed, restricting local government's ability to enact local rent control laws. This law prevents rent control of single-family homes or housing built after 1995, and Costa-Hawkins permits landlords to decide on the rent to charge when a property is first put on the rental market, and to raise rents enough to make a profit each year. Landlords can increase rent prices to market rates when a renter moves out. In 2018, voters rejected Prop 10, co-sponsored by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which would have allowed local governments to adopt rent control on any type of housing. The current situation, there is a shortage of rental housing in California, and as a result, California renters typically pay 50% more for housing than in other states. 20% of California renters are living in a few major cities which have rent control housing. Costa-Hawkins limits rent control measures, including what housing is included and how much a landlord can charge. Court cases have guaranteed landlords a fair rate of return, but a new law passed in 2019, AB 1482, restricts annual rent increases on older properties to no more than 5% plus inflation or 10% yearly, whichever is less. So what would change? With Prop 21, cities and counties could establish rent control on most housing 15 years or older, except for single-family homes owned by persons with 2 or fewer properties. Cities and counties would be able to limit a landlord to a 15% increase in rent over 3 years at the start of a new tenancy. The fair rate of return principle for landlords would become law. Fiscal effects, there are some possible economic effects to the rental market, including a sell-off of rental properties, which could reduce supply of rental housing. The value of rental housing could decline. Lower rents would mean less landlord income, and as a result, less income tax payments, and or some renters may move less often. Property and income tax revenues could be reduced in the tens of millions of dollars per year, depending on how many cities expand rent control. Local government costs could increase in the low tens of millions of dollars yearly for administrative costs. Here, I just want to pause to point out, like Prop 16, Prop 21 is not prescriptive. It doesn't require that anything come to pass, but simply opens that door. So these fiscal effects are projection, but it of course would depend on whether or not cities and counties act on the new allowances for rent control. Supporters and opponents. Supporters of Prop 21 say homelessness is a serious and growing problem. Small increases in rent can force more families into homelessness, which can be a burden on the entire community. Rent control keeps housing costs down and provides stability for renters. And finally, they say Prop 21 guarantees landlords a fair rate of return and allows local communities to limit their rent increases and preserve affordable housing. Opponents of the proposition say that a nearly identical proposal in 2018 was rejected by more than 60% of voters. Rent control results in less available and hence less affordable housing. They offer that a nonpartisan analysis estimates that if Prop 21 passes, housing values could be reduced by up to 20%. And they say Prop 21 will reduce the number of new housing units built, cost jobs, and hurt the economic recovery. Again, you can see on the screen a number of supporters and opponents. As always, check out votersedge.org to see the latest in that information, as well as financial contributions. So to wrap up, a yes vote gives governments expanded authority to enact rent controls on residential properties. A no vote will maintain current limits on city and county rent control. And Ashley, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, so when we were looking for information on this proposition, which I in particular am also interested in, and I'll say why in a minute. So it's saying that for the yes vote, it would help with homelessness and it would help with making houses more affordable, which from what I hear when I talk to other Californians is that that's one of the big issues in California is affordable housing. And then in the no vote side, it's saying that it reduces home values, stops new houses from being built, and that it will eliminates homeowner protections while providing no protections for renters, seniors, veterans, or the disabled. So I guess something that I'm wondering, because like I'm almost 30, I still live with my mom. I would love to be able to move out. I can't imagine living somewhere that has like anywhere less than like 3 roommates. And I'd be lucky to get someplace with like maybe more than 2 rooms. Is how I kind of see it. I don't even see the possibility of like home ownership at the rate that things are going, and I'm sure COVID definitely doesn't help that. Another example is I see gentrification happening. I've seen it in Oceanside. I have a friend who originally lived in Hawaii, but can no longer afford to live in Hawaii because of how much property value goes up over there. People buying rental property to go there for a vacation home and then never actually living there. I see that here where people are owning homes and then renting it out to other people at like a very high rent, also adding on to the issue of affordable housing. So yeah, I guess I'm wondering is like how badly does this affect those homeowners who are renting out their properties? Like, I guess I would like to see where it's like Californians live in California, and it's not like someone in a different state owning property in California and like making life harder for the people that actually live here and forcing us to move out. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Oh, I know we're running low on time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think it was you had really great feedback. I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. The students, we're totally fine with going past and continuing the recording going, but I just want to make everyone aware that right now we are set to go past 3 o'clock to get through all of the props. So just keep that in mind. But thank you, Ashley, for that. If anybody wants to jump in with a quick answer to that, and then we can move on, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I can just say quickly, so this proposition wouldn't affect houses like newer houses, houses under 15 years old, and it would not apply to landlords who own 2 or fewer properties. So for those smaller, a family that owns a home that they rent out, it wouldn't affect that, but it would affect larger developments. I think these are great questions. I would encourage you to check out our FAQ page, and if you want more nuance, email us and we'll get you the information that we can.
Great. Okay, we'll move on then to Prop 22, and Ashley, you're going to give me some support on this as well, right? So Prop 22 was placed on the ballot through an initiative petition sponsored primarily and with over $150 million, costing $150 million from Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash. California employers can hire workers in one of 2 categories, either as employees or independent contractors. Because many workers' protections do not apply to independent contractors, California labor law lays out strict guidelines on how a worker is to be classified. In the last 10 years, a whole new industry has appeared around app-based rideshare and delivery drivers. Today, as many as 800,000 Californians work as independent contractors for companies like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and Instacart. These app-based companies, mostly headquartered in California, do not pay employee protections such as workers' compensation insurance or unemployment insurance for their drivers. These companies were not required to pay into benefit programs such as Social Security, Medicare, or other employee benefits such as sick leave or health care insurance because their drivers were classified as independent contractors. Well, in 2019, state law AB 5 was passed that requires, on the contrary, those companies to hire drivers as employees, subject to state labor laws. Uber and Lyft did not comply and reclassify their drivers as employees, maintaining that the drivers were not employees. In August 2020, the courts ruled that Uber and Lyft were in violation of AB 5 and misclassified their workers since the law had been passed. So that ruling has been stayed. If Prop 22 passes, California labor law would be amended to add a new category of workers called the app-based driver. These workers would remain independent contractors, and new labor laws specific to them would be enacted, including minimum wage plus 20% while driving, medical costs if injured on the job, a rest period, and some health insurance subsidies and disability for certain drivers. This ballot measure would not affect how AB 5 is applied to other types of workers. There are not estimated to be much in the way of fiscal impacts to the state from these minor increases in state income taxes paid by drivers and investors. For companies, however, lower expenses could lower prices, increasing demand for more rides and orders. Supporters say that their surveys show that drivers want the flexibility of being classified as independent contractors. Roughly 80% of drivers work less than 20 hours per week, and categorizing these mostly part-time drivers as employees will increase costs, and companies will likely hire few drivers. Additionally, supporters say that Prop 22 would improve app-based driving work by requiring companies to provide new benefits and expand public safety due to background checks and safety courses, zero tolerance for drugs and alcohol offenses. Opponents, on the other hand, say that a majority of app-based drivers are full-time, with 70% working 30 hours or more a week. AB 5 allows for part-time drivers. These companies are buying themselves a special exemption from the law. Categorizing drivers as independent contractors eliminates workplace protections. California companies are already required to perform background checks, but Prop 22 would require sexual harassment training and investigation of sexual harassment claims. So go to Voter's Edge to find votersedge.org to find the latest figures on money spent for and against. So in summary, a yes vote means that you approve of defining app-based rideshare and delivery drivers as independent contractors and adopting labor and wages policies specific to this category of employment. A no vote means that you oppose this ballot measure which would keep app-based drivers as employees, subject to the wage and employment protections of California labor laws, and thus affirming California AB 5. Well, Ashley, would you like to add from your own research or emphasize any of the points I've made? or perhaps you have a personal perspective.
Yeah, sure. I actually know a couple people that do not Uber, but they do like Postmates, and a few of them like make their living off of that. So I guess this one has really been kind of a doozy for me, because they say yes votes helping them, but then they say no votes actually helping them. I get a little bit of a red flag seeing that it's like the rideshare companies that are like really funding this and really supporting the yes vote. And I've heard that, I mean, you can confirm confirm this for me, that they have said that they will pull out of California if we vote no. But something I'm kind of wondering is if they did have their drivers as employees as opposed to independent contractors, what's stopping them from having them go through the trainings that they would if they became independent contractors? Like if they were employees, like wouldn't they have to do sexual harassment training anyway? And wouldn't they like also get the protections they said that they would be getting if they were independent contractors? One of my friends who is a driver, she says that she's worried that they're gonna like take back their promises once this goes through, kind of thing. So yeah, if you could weigh in on that, that'd be kind of interesting. Yeah.
Well, I don't have any knowledge of what would be done subsequently to this. It's a tough one, because you may have picked up that the supporters and opponents are saying precisely the opposite information, right? In terms of what do drivers really want. I think one thing did show up with the COVID-19 problem. And so these drivers who were independent contractors didn't have unemployment insurance available to them, where had they been classified as employees, they would have had unemployment benefits if they had worked the appropriate number of hours within the last 3 quarters, or I forget what the unemployment law is precisely. So that's one example. I don't know, Meg, do you have anything that you'd like to share on that? Or?
I imagine we are tight on time, but I will just say you are right that I believe it's as of the 11th, the companies have spent over $180 million
Meg,
supporting.
Your audio's coming through a little crackly.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for the heads up. Is this any
that's
better?
perfect.
Wonderful. Sometimes just taking it out and putting it back in. But that quantity, over $180 million, is really staggering for state politics. I think the favorable view, people would say, oh, it's the companies trying to preempt state law and find a workable compromise. The more antagonistic view is that they are buying themselves. You see that text, they are buying themselves an exemption to the law to avoid having to pay the kinds of insurance and benefits that they would normally have to pay for employees. These are great questions. I wish we had more time to dig into them, but I think you're on the right track.
And we had a question that came in ahead that kind of just affirms some of what you're saying, or a question that another student had was, I've heard companies were buying a law by putting tons of money into campaigning for yes on 22. The question was, can you confirm or deny the main benefactors of this proposition? I think that was kind of captured, but I just thought it was important to share that a student did have that anonymous question and has seen some of that language as well. So I think it's right along the lines of kind of where everyone's heads are at.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. For sake of time, shall we move on to Prop 23?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Unless there's any other questions that we can quickly address, I think we can move on.
Okay. So Prop 23 would change California laws and was brought to the ballot by an initiative funded by the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, United Healthcare West. $5.5 million was spent to gather signatures to qualify, SEIU has been attempting to unionize the largest dialysis businesses, DaVita and Fresenius Medical Care, since 2016. Background information on dialysis. If a person's kidneys stop working, they may need a special treatment called dialysis from a licensed chronic dialysis clinic 3 times a week, with each treatment lasting up to 4 hours. These clinics are licensed by the California Department of Public Health using federal certification standards, which have limited requirements about staffing hours or ratios. Currently, approximately 600 licensed clinics operate in California. Most, but not all, of the clinics are owned and run by one of 2 private for-profit companies, DaVita and Fresenius Medical Care. Under current federal regulations, a patient's personal doctor must visit them at least once per month during treatment at a dialysis clinic, but regulations do not require the doctor to be on site for a specific amount of time. Federal regulations require infection-related information to be reported to a national network. So here's what would change. Prop 23 requires at least 1 licensed physician on site during all treatment at clinics. However, it allows for exemptions if there is a shortage of qualified licensed physicians and if the clinic has at least 1 nurse practitioner or physician assistant on site. Prop 23 also requires dialysis clinics to report dialysis-related infection data to the state as well as the federal government. Additionally, it will prohibit clinics from closing or reducing services without state approval, and it prohibits clinics from refusing to treat patients based on the source of payment for care, such as private insurance versus Medicare or Medi-Cal. Fiscal effects: there could be an increase to healthcare costs to state and local governments if clinics negotiate higher reimbursement rates, or if some clinics close and patients have to receive treatment at more expensive facilities. These costs are estimated to be in the low tens of millions of dollars annually. Supporters and opponents. Supporters of Prop 23 say dialysis is a dangerous procedure, and if something goes wrong, a doctor or highly trained nurse should be nearby. This initiative will make common sense improvements to dialysis treatment that will protect some of the most medically vulnerable people in our society. Opponents say more clinics are needed, not fewer. The increased cost of requiring on-site physicians at every clinic would force clinics to cut services and even close while rates of diabetes and kidney failure are rising. They say dialysis clinics are already strictly regulated and provide high-quality care. Prop 23 would make our physician shortage worse, they say, and lead to more overcrowding in emergency rooms. It looks like it might be a little cut off there, but you can see some of the supporters and opponents. But for more information, as always, check out votersedge.org. So finally, a yes vote supports the requirements that dialysis clinics have an on-site physician while patients are being treated. It supports having more reporting of dialysis-related infections, supports obtaining consent from the state health department before closing a clinic, and not discriminating against patients based on the source of payment for care. A no vote opposes this ballot measure, and regulations would not change. That's our prepared information. Sophie, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you, Meg. So I would just want to clarify that dialysis, as mentioned, is a treatment for individuals suffering from kidney disease or kidney failure, and what the procedure consists of is taking the patient's blood out, cleaning it, and putting it back into their body. This is something that over 80,000 Californians receive treatment on each month. And some statistics, according to a study by the independent Berkeley Research Group, Prop 23 would increase dialysis treatment costs by $320 million every year, and nearly half of the 600 clinics in California would become financially unstable, resulting in clinic closures and cutbacks.
Thank you for adding that. Does anyone have any other questions or comments on the proposition?
Okay, it doesn't look like it, so we're going to go ahead and proceed with Prop 24. with some help from Ian Clark. Prop 24 is a citizens initiative with a twist. The sponsor, Alistair McTaggart, a San Francisco-based real estate developer, launched a similar initiative in 2018. He withdrew that initiative, however, when the legislature passed the California Consumer Privacy Act. Prop 24 seeks to amend that act passed in 2018. To qualify for the ballot, 620,000 verified signatures were gathered at a cost of $4.33 million. There has been an increased call for privacy protection around the world as data is collected from consumers' web browsing, online shopping, social media, and location trackers. This collected data is often sold to other companies who use it to market their products to us. The European Union implemented data privacy protection regulations in 2018, allowing sanctions on data companies for non-compliance. The California legislature passed the Consumer Protection Act of 2018, which is considered the toughest consumer privacy legislation in our country. Since that law was signed, there have been changes to the act to align it with other privacy laws and clarifications. The act went into effect on January 2020 and was to be enforced starting in July. But the way it is now, the act gives consumers the right to know what data is being collected, to delete their personal data, to opt out of data collection for adults, and to opt in for minors 16 and under. Currently, the Act spells out which businesses are required using several factors, including those earning 50% or more of their revenue from selling collected data. The Attorney General's office is responsible for enforcing this law in California. If Prop 24 is approved, it would create a new state agency to enforce data privacy regulations. The determination of which businesses regulated would be modified. Businesses would have to make it easier for consumers to opt out of data collection and to correct errors. Some data would be reclassified as personal or sensitive. Prop 24 would increase penalties for infractions, and consumers would have more rights to sue for damages in data breaches. Prop 24 allows the legislature to make changes to this law only in ways that are consistent with and further its purpose and intent. It's estimated that it would cost the state about $10 million annually to create and run the new state agency. There is expected increased annual enforcement costs in the low millions of dollars, offset by collection of fines from violators. Supporters say that Prop 24 would strengthen existing protections by establishing a new California Privacy Protection Agency with $10 million a year. Stricter restrictions would be put in place. Supporters also say that by virtue of being a ballot initiative, it would be less vulnerable to watering down through the pressures that lobbyists put on legislators. Opponents, however, say that Prop 24 burdens consumers to opt out of countless intrusive data collection practices. It would hurt poor people who are not able to afford loyalty programs to protect their privacy. Prop 24 would allow employers to keep gathering data about things like employees' pregnancies, religion, or political activism. That's what opponents say, but to follow the money and see who the latest and contributors are, please look at Votersedgeorg for that information. So in summary, a yes vote means that you want to modify the act and create a California Consumer Privacy Protection Agency. No means that you do not want to change the law or to create a California Consumer Privacy Act. Oh, hi again, Ian. Would you like
Hey
to
there.
add from your research, or perhaps?
Well, yeah, actually, I would love to on this one because I picked this one for a very specific reason. And it's because this was the one that I was the most confused about. And I wanted to learn. And I am getting closer to my own personal decision, but I wanted to talk about why. And the yes, obviously, I think everyone is tired of spam and no one wants to have their information sold. I think that's just pretty much a no-brainer. Obviously, we want protection. However, California has some of the strongest laws that are already protecting us in the entire nation. So do we really want to just give away millions of dollars to some random organization of people that may be using money in some unknown ways? So I don't know. I then usually look to who is supporting. Yes is supported by the NAACP. I donate money every month to the NAACP. No is supported by the ACLU. I donate money every month to the ACLU. So I am here in the middle, and I am still making up my mind on this decision, even at this point. And so I say it to be perfectly honest and also to see if anyone else is feeling the same way.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good point, Ian. I also noticed those two organizations specifically on opposite sides of this proposition that stuck out to me most. I just wanted to chime in with that a little tidbit there because I did notice that.
It's not always easy. That's why we told you at the beginning that I'm not proposing that you leave this one blank, but if you cannot come to your decision, leaving one item blank on your ballot does not invalidate your ballot. Everything else that you voted on would be counted. Okay. If there are no questions, shall Meg and Sophie Musgrave move on to Prop 25, our last one?
Yeah, we can close it out. Thank you everyone for sticking with us so far. So our last proposition this afternoon is Prop 25, which is a referendum on the cash bail system. This proposition is different from the others. As I mentioned, it is a referendum, often called the people's veto, because it provides people the opportunity to approve or reject a law. In this case, a bill was passed by the legislature, then signatures were gathered to oppose it. Sponsors of the referendum spent $2.7 million to gather the required 576,000 signatures. Some background. As part of a wave of criminal justice reforms, in 2018, the legislature passed and Governor Jerry Brown signed SB 10, a bill that would replace bail with a system that grants judges greater power to decide who should remain incarcerated before trial. Bail is basically a promise or guarantee that if released, someone charged with a crime promises to return for trial or sentencing. A day after Governor Brown signed the bill, a national coalition of bail agency groups launched a successful referendum drive to overturn it. SB 10 was suspended from becoming law, and now the people must decide whether to approve or reject SB 10. So as things stand today, people accused or charged with a crime are arrested and taken to jail before being arraigned in court to hear the charges against them. Except for certain felony crimes, people have the right to be released on bail while awaiting trial. A promise of making bail a financial guarantee to appear in court is part of the release process. If a defendant has enough money to cover the bail amount, then the defendant would get the bail costs back after the court appearance. If a defendant does not have the bail amount, a defendant can borrow from a bail bondsman by paying a 10% fee that is not returned whether you appear in court or not. And the alternative to all of this is to stay in jail. The bail industry, considered part of the insurance industry, is regulated by the state. In 2018, the bail industry issued $6 billion with a B in bonds and received $560 million in fees from accused people seeking release before trial. What would change? Prop 25 asks the voters whether they approve of getting rid of the current bail system and allowing SB 10 to go into effect. Cash bail would be eliminated for people charged with less serious crimes. Courts would determine if people charged with more serious crimes should be released. Judges could keep someone in jail if deemed a risk to public safety or at risk of not returning for trial. Potential fiscal effects: state and local costs to operate the pretrial assessment process could increase by the mid-hundreds of millions of dollars per year. Meanwhile, counties would save in the tens of millions of dollars annually due to lower jail costs. Supporters and opponents. Supporters argue that the current system is unfair. Defendants who have money can go free until their trial. People who do not must pay non-refundable fees or stay in jail. People who are eventually found not guilty or not even charged may be stuck with large debts to pay off bail bond fees. Opponents fear that the new assessment tools will be unfair to minorities and that more people will be jailed because judges will have too much power to put more people behind bars. Prop 25 will cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars a year, overburdening courts and creating a new bureaucracy, and releasing people without bail will lead to less public safety. Again, we can all say it together at this point: to follow the money and see the latest in contributors, check out votersedgeorg. So to summarize, if you vote yes, SB 10 will be approved, the current cash bail system will be eliminated, and decisions about pre-trial release for serious offenders will be based on a risk assessment tool. That's the algorithm you might hear mentioned in advertising. If you vote no, the cash bail system will be maintained as is. So that is our information on Prop 25. Sophie, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you. So as Meg mentioned, the assessment will be used to inform and guide the decision of the judge, but not determine it, giving the judge more power on the decision. The risk factors that will be taken into consideration conclude the characteristics of the defendant, their social environment, and their circumstances that could increase or decrease their likelihood to appear at trial or get arrested again. These include the defendant age, the substance use, criminal history, active community supervision, pending and current charges, employment stability, education, residential stability, relationships, and community ties.
Nice. The only thing I'd add by way of context, this was something that I learned. I honestly did not know a whole lot about the cash bail system previous to this, is that in my mind, people being held before trial, it was a matter of days or maybe weeks. But the reality is it can be months to a year. And people who are not able to make bail and required to stay in jail awaiting trial, where they may not even be charged with anything, might lose their job, might lose custody of their children, and generally face the impact that comes with missing that period of their life because you were in jail awaiting trial. So I don't think that gets addressed in our presentation, but something for me that really stuck out to me and I felt was important context to consider as it relates to Prop 25.
Looks like we have a hand raised from Ashley.
Yes, I feel like this proposition in particular is a very heavy double-edged sword, because it's like, it drives me crazy seeing people pay their bail and get out of jail, and when I'm just like, they're not serving their time equally the same as other people. But at the same time, if we get rid of the bail system, there's people like, arrests in jail disproportionately affect people of color and people in poverty. So, like, on the one hand, this proposition could hold people accountable who aren't in a poverty situation, but on the other hand, it could take away an opportunity someone in poverty might have had if someone like heard about their situation and wanted to help out. So it's like, I would love to see people held accountable where they would normally be able to pay their way out. But at the same time, I'm worried about like how long it takes to get a court hearing for when you have a crime. And also like, as we mentioned earlier with Proposition 16, people's personal biases, and like someone deciding that this person needs to be held for risk assessment or whatever, as opposed to like this other person who might be as big of a risk, but it's harder to tell because they're hiding it with all the money they have. So again, double-edged sword. I'm like kind of on the fence about this one.
The only other thing I'll add in terms of risk assessment is for certain categories of crime, individuals just aren't eligible for bail. So to be eligible for bail means you fall within a certain category based on your history, the context of, the crime you are or will be accused of, and other factors. So I think it's helpful to keep that in mind, that it is a nuance. It's not, let's open the doors and let everyone out. Like, there are considerations in place, and some people just simply aren't eligible depending on the category of crime that's in question. But absolutely, I appreciate your kind of nuance in considering what are all of the potential impacts of this proposition.
Yeah. And I think also important to keep in mind is that, our system says that a person is innocent until proven guilty. Right, so we're talking about people who have been arrested for something, but have not been proven guilty one way or the other. Just to sort of keep that in mind.
And we had a question come through ahead of time. I think it was kind of addressed, but I still wanted to pose it in case there's any additional commentary. It says, is a possible repercussion of Prop 25 racial discrimination and keeping certain groups in jail without bail because of race? I see the benefits this prop could have to economic disparity. People who can't afford bail could still get out of jail until their trial, but I think the system would discriminate against poor people anyways. Who does this risk assessment? Is it police, courts, or something else? I think that part was addressed, but I think that some of the other part of it on race, if anyone wants to speak to that.
Well, I think that the tool is a judicial tool. It's not the police department's tool. And Ashley read that really long list of items that would be included as an assessment. So from my view, it is much more, it is a more objective process, right? And your person who wrote the question is right that definitely people with less money are really affected negatively by the cash bail system now.
For sure.
I don't think we have any more questions. Do you want to close us out?
Sure. I will just say, so first off, thank you everyone for your attention. I think that there were some really wonderful conversations. Obviously we could go on for hours and hours, but we do, welcome you to continue the conversation in a slightly different way. Any additional questions or, things we didn't get to or things you're still sitting with, like we mentioned, we really encourage you to reach out to our website and either see what resources we provide, which may already answer that, or if you're not getting a satisfying answer, ask us, because I'm sure there are other people in the community that have the same question. They just haven't even thought to ask it yet. And so to do that, we want to offer, here's our contact information, the website, lwvncsd.org, or the phone number. Also, the phone number for the Register of Voters for any questions you may have regarding voting logistics. That phone number is 858-565-5800. And then we just want to share these other voter resources. We mentioned Voter's Edge, I think rough count 1 million times in the presentation. Also easyvoterguide.org, English, Spanish, in addition to some other languages to help you, understand. They also provide a very clear yes vote means, no vote means. So to close out, we want to thank you again for your time. The League of Women Voters really treasures these opportunities to connect, and we welcome your support either through membership or continuing to attend events like these and being an active participant in our democracy. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Meg and Rita, for joining us and giving that wonderful presentation. It was very informative. And I also want to give a huge thank you to all of our ASG members who did so much great work on research these and provided such great perspective and conversation. And I know our community is going to really benefit from this conversation and get a lot out of it. So I really appreciate everybody who was here and participated. And like they said, we can continue this conversation in other ways. Feel free to email us, reach out. I can put some of that in the chat. And thank you all once again for being here.
Well, it's our pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, that was mountains and mountains of work. So just super, super excited, proud. I took a lot of notes, so I have a much better understanding of what I'm going to be doing. Also generated some, further questions. So I'm going to go ahead and play the rest of that I Vote Because video to close this out, but feel free to hop off. I know a lot of folks stayed on over time. So just thank you all for being with us. Appreciate everything you all did. It was wonderful. So I love this video too, so I'm gonna hang out and watch the rest of it. So if everyone leaves and I'm by myself, that's okay.
My name is Ashley Brandt. I am the Director of Legislative Affairs for the 2020-2021 year at Miracosta College. And the reason I vote is sometimes it only takes 1 gram to tip the scales. I want to make a difference for the people that I care about the most. And the more you voice your opinion, the more that opinion gets recorded, the more likely it is to see the changes that you want to take place. Be the change that you wish to see.
Hi everyone, my name is Maria Daneta and I cannot vote, but I encourage everyone to vote because voting is important, and by not voting you're giving up your voice to make a change.
Hi, my name is Wendy Stewart, pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm the Dean of Counseling and Student Development. And I vote because at one time in this country, someone like me, who is Black and who is a woman, it was illegal for me to vote. And there were those who protested, who struggled, who fought, and even put their lives on the line so that I could go to the polls today. And so I honor their memory. I honor that my voice has power and the importance of my voice by making sure that I vote.
It's important to vote because as citizens of a democratic country, we have the right to choose and elect a leader who best represents us and will listen to our problems. Therefore, we need to focus on their beliefs and morals and on their ideas of what they're planning to do in this upcoming or next years. Please vote.
Hey everybody, my name is Chelsea and I vote because there are a lot of people out there who are prevented from voting for a number of different reasons. And I think that that's not really fair. I think that their voice matters. So when I vote while keeping in mind the voices of my local community. So if you're somebody who can vote, please, please, please vote. If you're somebody who is unable to vote or prevented from voting for a certain reason, please activate your voice because there are people out there who are listening and want to vote with you in mind.
Hi y'all, it's Doc, and I'm here to tell you that we need to rock the vote this November. Now more than ever, your voice is meaningful. You all have been sheltering in since March. We've been remote learning since March. We've had to figure out how to mask up so we can protect ourselves, and now we need to protect our futures. So do me and all of your peers a favor and get out there and cast your vote. You can still register right here and right now. Don't let anyone out there stop you from making a difference. I'm getting ready to cast my vote, and I hope to see you at the polls too.
I'm Nick Mortallone, Dean of Student Affairs. I vote because my rights and my marriage are at stake, and because I believe my voice could lead to positive change for people of color and the LGBTQIA+ community.
I vote because I have a voice and I want to use it to contribute to positive change for a better future for others, myself, and generations to come.
I vote because I believe that my vote could help progress society to enable bigger and better opportunities for future generations to come. I vote because although my vote is just one vote, it is because of millions of others just like mine that could help make the changes that society needs today.
Oh, hey there, Spartans. Devin Boone here, Director of the CARE Program at Maricosta College. You're probably wondering why I vote. And if you were to ask me, I'd say I vote because at one point in time, I would not have been able to because of the color of my skin. I also vote because it could be the tipping point that leads to positive change. So I encourage all you Spartans to get out there and vote at this upcoming election. Take care.
Hey, my name's Keenan. I'm a senator at the San Elijo campus, and I vote to preserve my independence.
I vote for a few reasons. One, I want my voice and my vote to be counted and to be heard. I vote for my ancestors who were never given the right to vote. I want to honor their voices and their votes. I vote because the 19th Amendment did not give the right for all women to vote. So I vote for the women in my bloodline that came before me that were never given the right and or the voices and or the privilege to vote. My vote, I honor them. I also vote for individuals that have received a felony conviction, have done their time, have been released from a prison or jail, and have not received automatic restoration. I vote for those individuals. These are some of my reasons and why I vote. What are yours? Go rock your vote. It matters and it counts.
I vote because I believe my voice matters, and I believe that my voice has the power to create positive change in my community and to better my future.